Hi guys! So today I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up. This is my final wrap-up of 2017 and my final video for the whole year, which is really weird. So I read 9 books in December, which I'm pretty happy with because it was a very busy month this year, but because of that I feel like I've really forgotten a lot of the books that I read at the beginning of the month, so I'm sorry if my synopsis or mini reviews are more vague than usual. But yeah, let's just get started. So the first book that I finished in December was Nightfall by Jake Halpern and Peter Kachowinski. This is a YA thriller, maybe horror, I'm not 100% sure, but it follows these 3 teenagers and they live on this island where every 28 years of day comes 14 years of night, and when this happens all of the people of the island have to leave and go to this other place, but before they go they have to do these strange rituals, and nobody really talks about what happens on the island when it's just completely dark for those 14 years, and then after that they all come back to the island and then, you know, repeat the process. But it follows these 3 teenagers who actually end up getting left behind when this happens. I believe I gave this book 3, maybe 3.5 stars. This book I picked up off of Book Outlet probably like a year ago because I let things sit on my shelf for forever. But the plot of it always really intrigued me, and I'd have to say that the best part of this whole thing is the idea behind the plot, but I feel like it wasn't executed to the best of its ability because, I mean, the whole idea of this island where it's dark for 14 years and you don't know what's going on and you get left behind there is like really creepy and it's really intriguing. But I think the biggest problem that I had with this was that the characters, I believe, are 14, which I don't know exactly what age range the characters have to be in order for it to be considered middle grade or YA, but I know personally this book is marketed as a YA, and I feel like with the usual young adult books, the characters are 16, and sometimes it's a little bit unbelievable as is with these characters that are younger, 16 years old, surviving these big things, whereas now in this book you make them 2 years younger than that and it becomes that much more just like unrealistic. And so I just feel like with the younger characters, and there are points when they act older than they are but then they do like a really immature thing or they say something really dumb, and I'm just like, what is happening here? It just felt a little bit more like a middle grade, and I feel like that kind of took away from the creepy factor that could have been there, as well as that sometimes I felt like the writing felt a little bit juvenile. So yeah, overall I think the whole idea behind this story is really interesting, and I still think it was worth the read. As I said, I gave it 3 or 3.5 stars, so I did like it. I just wish maybe the characters had been a little bit older. So yeah, that is the first book I read in December. Next I read What Light by J. Asher. This is just a cute little contemporary Christmas novel. It follows a girl whose name I've already forgotten. So it follows this teenage girl called Sierra, and her family owns a Christmas tree farm. I don't remember where, but they own it somewhere. But during the holidays, they go to California to sell Christmas trees on a farm in California. And while she's there, she ends up meeting this boy who has a pretty bad reputation. So she's kind of struggling between whether she wants to form a relationship with him because she really likes him, but he has this like bad past that I don't want to say what it is. And then at the same time she's struggling with the fact that her parents might not afford to be able to come to California again next year. Again, I think I gave this book like 3 stars. It was like a cute contemporary. It was nothing amazing, nothing blew my mind. I don't think I really bought the relationship that much, which is obviously a big part of the story. I just didn't really like the love interest all that much, and I just didn't buy the relationship. So yeah, it was cute. I liked it. It did what I was hoping to do, but that's about all. The next book I read was Hannas Help by Karen Kingsbury, which is another Christmas novel that I'm sure nobody cares to hear about now that Christmas is over. But Karen Kingsbury is one of my favorite authors. She writes adult Christian fiction, so this is just a short little book, but it follows a girl called Hannah, and she just found out that the man that she always thought was her father isn't her biological dad, so she's trying to find her real dad before Christmas, but it's going to be a little bit hard to do because he is stationed in Iraq or Afghanistan. I can't remember, sorry, but he is stationed in one of those countries. The book's mainly told from the perspective of Hannah, but sometimes we do also get the perspective of her dad when he's trying to figure out what happened to his daughter that he hasn't seen since she was like 4 years old. I gave this book like 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it, which is no surprise because I do love all of Karen Kingsbury's books. Even though it was very short, which is definitely the only downfall of it, this book was just so heartwarming and it was great for the holidays. Absolutely loved it. Next up, I read The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. This is a sci-fi novel that follows a young girl, and she is in a spacecraft going to this other planet that NASA is hoping to turn into like a new Earth. So she was supposed to be traveling there with other people, but something went wrong and they all died, so she is on her own now, and it's going to take her a really long time to get to this planet. So she's already been traveling in space for a very long time, her whole life actually. And so she's not supposed to get there until she's like in her 20s or something. And in order to get messages from Earth or to send them, it takes years. So when she gets a message from NASA, it was sent 2 years previous. And she gets a message from them telling her that they've sent another spacecraft with someone in it to join her on the planet, but it's traveling at like twice the speed that she is, so it'll hopefully get there at like the same time as her. So she starts sending messages back and forth with this guy on this other spaceship, but again, the messages take like months to send back and forth. So that's pretty much all I'm going to tell you about the plot. I think I gave this book 4 stars. It was pretty good, and just let me tell you about this book. Okay, so right off the bat, I really enjoyed it because it was very open and honest about things that you don't normally hear about in YA books, like periods or sex, and the main character has anxiety, which isn't like a main plot point, but it's still something important to mention. So I really enjoyed that about the story, but I have to say about halfway through, I started to get a little bit bored. I felt like the plot wasn't really progressing, and at that point I didn't really see how it was going to, because it was basically just this girl messaging back and forth with this guy, but it's taking like months and months to get these messages, so they're not really talking, they're just sending messages to each other. But then the plot twist happened, and I was like, oh my gosh. Suddenly went from this cute sci-fi to this epic thriller where I was on the edge of my seat. I needed to know what was going to happen next, and it like blew my mind. I absolutely loved the ending of this book. That being said, I still was pretty bored throughout the beginning, middle of it, so that's why I didn't give it a full 5 stars and I gave it 4 stars, but nonetheless, I still really enjoyed it just for the ending alone. So I would highly recommend this book to anyone who enjoys sci-fi or thrillers. You just have to like give it a little bit. I feel like this is definitely like a hidden gem in the book YA world, because I haven't really heard anybody talk about this on BookTube, so I would highly recommend checking this book out. The next book I read was Hotel Ruby. This is another like YA thriller book. It follows a girl called Audrey, and her mother has recently passed away, so her grief-stricken father suggests that her and her older brother go to live with a family member. I think it was like their grandma or the aunt or something. But while they're on their way there, they decide to stop at a hotel, the Hotel Ruby, and spend a night there. But then one night turns into 2 nights, and 2 nights turns into 3 nights, and there's this mysterious party that takes place in the ballroom every single night, but it's invitation only, and everyone in the hotel seems to have an invitation except for Audrey. So she's trying to figure out exactly what's going on here. I think I gave this book 3.5 stars. There was a lot of average reads this month. This book, I don't really know if I have anything like bad or good to say about it. It just was kind of mediocre for me. Like, the characters were fine, there wasn't anything wrong with them, but I didn't love them. The plot was pretty interesting for the last half. Like, it started off very interesting, like I was intrigued, but then I started to get bored, and of course there was like a romance introduced in, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, and I felt like it was a little bit out of place in this story, and so overall it was just kind of mediocre. I feel like this would go better as a movie, just like it would be easier to picture the stuff that's happening, well obviously because you'd be watching it, but it was just sometimes a little bit difficult to imagine it like reading it. So yeah, overall it was good, but it didn't blow my mind. Next up, I read Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. This book, I'm assuming most people know what it's about, so I'm not going to explain a synopsis. But I am a really big fan of Alice in Wonderland, and I feel like these are two books that go hand in hand. Like people always say, if you like Peter Pan, you like Alice in Wonderland, and vice versa. So I figured I would read this, and I was really hoping that I would enjoy it. Unfortunately, I did not. I think I gave it like 2, maybe 2.5 stars. One of the things I do really like about Alice in Wonderland is that the writing is pretty easy to understand, which is my biggest problem when it comes to reading classics. And I figured because this is a children's book, just like Alice in Wonderland, the writing would be a little bit easier, but it was not, and there were times when I did find this a little bit difficult to read, and it took me a lot longer than I expected it to. And I also just think overall, Peter Pan has never been one of my favorite stories, so yeah, it just wasn't super interesting for me. I will say though that there were a couple parts in this book where I was just like, wow. Like, Peter Pan is such a brat in this book, and I mean, at the same time, this book must have been written by like a feminist, because there are so many things in this book how Peter Pan is such a brat, but he's such like a gentleman when it comes to Wendy. Like when they go to Neverland, him and the Lost Boys want to build Wendy a home, and John's like, why would you do that? She's just a girl. And the Lost Boys were like, that's why we're gonna serve her. And they say that the Lost Boys are there because they're like the babies that fell out of their prams, and they're like, why aren't there any lost girls? And Peter's like, because girls are too clever to fall out of their prams. And there's also just these things that Peter does, like supposedly in Neverland, every time you take a breath an adult dies, and so there's this part where Peter's like really angry, and so he's purposefully taking really short quick breaths and like killing them off one by one, and I was just like, holy cow. This is a children's book? So yeah, there were some parts in this book where I was like laughing out loud, but for the most part it was just kind of okay for me. Next up I read Mr. Miracle by Debbie McCumber. This is just your classic cheesy Christmas novel. So this story is told from 2 perspectives. The first one is from Gabriel, and he is kind of like a guardian angel, and he is sent to Earth to try and help this 24-year-old girl called Addie try and get her life back on track. And the second perspective is from Addie, and she recently has moved back to her hometown, and this is the first Christmas without her dad. He passed away the summer before, I think. This book is just mainly about the romance between Addie and her next door neighbor, who she's known since she was a child, and they really don't like each other. So it's definitely one of those hate to love stories, if that's something that you like for the holidays, maybe next year. But yeah, I gave this book 3 stars. Like, it was just one of those cheesy reads. I got out of it exactly what I wanted to, just something to get me into the holiday spirit. So yeah, it was cute, it was cheesy, it was very predictable, but sometimes you need that. The next book that I finished in December is not one that I ever expected to read, and that is King of Spies by Blaine Harden. This is a non-fiction book about Donald Nichols, who was a spy in the Korean War. This is not a book that I would ever choose to read, but basically my grandpa was drafted into the Korean War, so one of his friends got him this book, but he doesn't really read, so I'm like reading it for him. So that's the only reason I read this book. I gave it 2 stars because obviously it's just not something I'm interested in reading. Also, for a lot of this book I was kind of confused because I feel like the author kind of expects you to know about war and stuff like that, which I don't know anything about, so I was a bit confused and just bored through most of this book. So yeah, gave it 2 stars. And then the final book that I read in December was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This is my 3rd time reading this book, which officially makes it my most read book, but I've never read this edition before, and this is the one with the illustrations by Camille Rose Garcia, so it has beautiful illustrations throughout it, and I'll actually see if I can find my favorite one to show you. Okay, so this was my favorite illustration. It's the one of the cards painting the roses red. I just really love that one. Yeah, I obviously gave it 5 stars because Alice in Wonderland is one of my all-time favorite stories, and I think I'm gonna make it like a tradition to reread it every year, probably a different edition every year with this rate I'm going at buying these books. So yeah, those were all of the books that I read in December. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what your favorite read was in December. Mine was probably Alice in Wonderland, with Hannas Help as a close second, and The Loneliest Girl in the Universe in third, because that ending, I can't get it out of my mind. So that is all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!